Seriously, genuinely, this is the perfect gaming monitor. This is the AOC AG276QZD2. And that 2 appended there is really important because with it comes a serious improvement. This bad boy is a QD or quantum dot OLED panel, and that means that it's frankly amazing. I'm gonna run out of gushingly positive adjectives real fast here, so let me explain why exactly I'm so smitten with this thing, starting with a tour around it. This is a 27-inch panel with reasonably thin flush bezels all around, including a fairly thin chin bar. The back is nicely styled, complete with RGB lighting that you can fully disable if you're that way inclined. The stand is fully adjustable, sporting tilt, height, and swivel adjustments, plus 90 degrees of rotation to put it into portrait mode if you're crazy enough to have this as a secondary monitor. I/O is decent enough, with 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, sadly not 2.1, so these top out 144Hz rather than the full 240, and 2 DisplayPort 1.4 ports, which can do the full 240Hz. You also get a 2-port USB hub, with the yellow port being for charging devices, and it does have speakers built in, although they do leave a fair bit to be desired. Spec-wise, this is a stunning 1440p 240Hz QD-OLED panel, claiming to hit 250 nits of peak brightness and a whopping 99% coverage of the DCI-P3 spectrum. And in fact, AOC include a calibration certificate in the box that shows that it does, in fact, hit that. And an excellent delta E figure too, almost always under 1, which is excellent, meaning this is a very accurate panel. In my own testing with the Datacolor Spider X2, I saw the same 99% coverage of DCI-P3 and 83% of Rec 2020, around 242 nits of full screen brightness, and an average delta E of just 0.77, which is amazing. One thing I do want to quickly explain though is that brightness figure. OLEDs, especially glossy panel QD OLEDs like this one, are kind of deceptive when it comes to brightness. 250 nits really isn't a lot, but whether it's the matte coating most other monitors offer or some black magic in the panels themselves, this 250 nits is nowhere near the same experience as, say, an IPS panel outputting 250 nits. My camera picks this up pretty well actually. This is how I would usually expose a shot to film a monitor, but for this one, even under my bright studio lights, the monitor is super blown out. I have to turn the camera down a fair bit to expose for the display at full brightness, which means everything else looks super dark. This is an incredibly bright monitor to the eyes, even though the specs don't necessarily reflect that. Naturally, being an OLED, this has instant response times. My open source response time tool, available at osrtt.com, is actually likely the limiting factor here in measuring this accurately, reporting under 1 millisecond pretty much across the board. The nice thing about QD OLEDs though is that unlike their WOLED counterparts, of which the AG276QZD2 I guess, was one, this doesn't have an adaptive brightness limiter that cuts back the brightness of brighter scenes. This is full bore the whole time. It's amazing. You do have a whole bunch of OLED Care settings though, even more than my Evnia 8600 offers in fact. You get pixel orbiting, which uses the spare pixels on the edges of the panel to move the 1440p image around slightly so you don't get burn-in in specific places. You've got the full pixel refresh, the screensaver, which dims the brightness if there isn't activity on screen. The logo protection, which also selectively dims the display if there are static logos on the screen for long periods. Boundary dimmer, which if you have black bars on the screen can help dim the display appropriately. Taskbar dimmer, which, you guessed it, dims the taskbar in particular, and thermal protection, which dims the brightness if the monitor gets to be over 60 degrees Celsius. Basically, it can either refresh the display or dim the display. But there are a bunch of options for dimming that can make it more or less intrusive. As someone who has been using a QD-OLED panel, a lot like this one in fact, as my main display, I can say that burn-in really isn't a concern at all. Even after months, possibly going on a year at this point, there is not even the slightest hint of burn-in. QD-OLED is amazing. Naturally for gaming, well, this is just incredible. It's lightning fast, low latency, right around half the refresh rate according to OSRTT, and just a ludicrously smooth experience thanks to the 240Hz refresh rates and the instant response times from the OLED panel. It's also vibrant and rich, which makes games look amazing and only adds to the frankly exceptional gaming experience in general. This really is all you could ask for in a gaming monitor. Naturally, the downside of having such an amazing monitor is that it becomes abundantly clear that your losses in games is a skill issue and not an equipment issue. So if your ego can't take that hit, then don't buy this monitor. Otherwise, have at it. Jokes aside, I think it's pretty obvious that I really enjoy gaming on this thing. Much like my Ebony 8600, it's an exceptional experience in all genres, be that competitive CS2 or laid-back farming sims. It's a great time. I should also mention that because this is a QD-OLED panel rather than a WOLED, this is a lot closer to a conventional pixel layout than its WOLED counterparts. This is a tri-dot pattern with red, green and blue dots. That means that text looks pretty much perfect, whereas WOLEDs which have red, green, blue and white LEDs per pixel, that means that text looks blurred and like less than pleasing to the eye. This doesn't have that problem at all, which again is why I much prefer QD-OLED panels, especially for monitors. Combine that with the much better burn-in performance, the lack of an intrusive adaptive brightness limiter, and the generally much better visual experience, and yeah, this is for sure my choice. What also helps with that even more is that this bad boy, despite being literally every gamer's wet dream in terms of specs and experience, is just £450. A couple of years ago, that wouldn't have bought you any decent 1440p high refresh rate monitors, and now it buys you the best? Hell yeah! Well, it is still expensive, and I know that a lot of people are more in the like £100 to £200 price range, of which AOC has some phenomenal options there too, video in the cards above. If you have the cash, this easily gets a glowing recommendation from me. This feels basically unbeatable in terms of price and performance, so amazing job there, AOC. Of course, those are my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the AG276QZD2? Is this a monitor you're interested in picking up? Is it slightly out of your price range, but more of an aspirational purchase, or you're just not interested? Let me know in the comments down below. If you do want to check it out, I will leave a link to it in the description down below. You can also check out plenty of other videos on the end cards. If you want to see more videos like this one, hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon. And if you want to check out my own hardware, the open source response time tool that I use to test displays like this one, head to osrtt.com, linked in the description. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, we'll see you on the next video.